Welcome to the England Rugby Pod. Thanks for downloading episode 146. England's World Cup campaign continues to gather momentum as they enjoyed some lack of the Irish at the weekend. And we look ahead to the Italy clash. You're listening to the England Rugby Pod, the rugby podcast that believes England will win the World Cup in 2019. Hey guys, welcome back. A midweek episode. There's no game this weekend for England, but still plenty to talk about. And guess what? Dan's back. Hi, mate.
Hello, matey. How are we?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Obviously, gutted. Well, not gutted, but looking forward to seeing more action from the England boys, especially after last weekend. But it's going to have to wait an extra week. But still an interesting game this weekend with Wales against Ireland. So looking forward to seeing how they get on, because that could throw a few cats amongst some pigeons.
That's, I believe that's the phrase. Yeah, it was this week, and we'll go into more depth about it. Jesus Christ, that was. I don't think I could ever have seen that result coming, and we'll go into a bit more about it. But I listened to another good pod from you and Billy. I thought.
Thank you.
I thought you boys covered it very well. I really enjoyed listening to that, actually.
Yeah, well, I think both of us, thanks to Billy for kind of stepping in, and it all happened fairly quickly on fairly short notice. But really appreciate you doing that, Billy, and I'm sure for you and also for the rest of our listeners, it won't be the last time that we hear from him. But Dan is making a return, at least as far as the plan is for now, for the live pod against Italy, as that's a Friday night game. So you'll have Dan and his wisdom back for that one.
I believe we'll probably watch that at yours over a couple of beers. Is that still the current plan, or would you rather I stay away?
Is now the time to answer that question?
Well, I'll be there anyway.
Okay, good. Either way, we will have an episode for you, and with any luck, Dan will feature in it, which will be nice. But Dan, before we get into kind of what's going on and what that means for the next few weeks and for the World Cup and everything else, no new reviews, but I did want to just give a quick shout out to Jared Marshall. He's the owner of the English Rugby Fanatics Talking Facebook group, and he got in touch with us in the week. He'd obviously come across the podcast. He liked what we were doing. I think he's in a fairly similar boat. He and one of his friends, big rugby fans, England rugby fans, always kind of talk tactics with one another, and decided to sort of try and do something more with that. And in their case, they set up this Facebook group, and it, by all accounts, went a bit nuts. So he has been sharing our content, which is awesome. And so Jared, thanks for asking us to get involved with that. Thanks for sharing our latest episode and hopefully future ones as well. And thanks to all of your members for engaging with us. And also, we will definitely look to try and get you guys on the pod at some point and have a chat and see what your thoughts are, because it sounds like we're all fairly similar in the way that we view these England boys and their chances at this year's World Cup. So, appreciate that. Yeah,
Jared sounds like someone we should chat with more, for no reason other than
you need friends,
a like-minded individual. Okay. Yeah, exactly. I was trying to put it nicer, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
Fair enough. The other thing, guys, I did put a tweet out last week. I've had absolutely no responses from it, but we're looking, or Dan doesn't know this yet, but he will do in a moment. We're looking for any Tongan, American, Argentinian, or Argentine, or French rugby fans that obviously listen to the pod, or if any of you guys know anyone that would be interested, who might want to do like a midweek kind of guest spot, even just sort of 10-15 minute chat in the build up to our pool stage games against their respective teams, because that could be quite interesting. But obviously, short notice is all going to start happening next month. So
that's a great idea.
But it would be quite cool to, I can't promise we'll give you the platform to give yourselves too much of a chance, because of course this is the England Rugby Pod, and we're all about blind loyalty. But it would be cool to get some sort of viewpoints from the enemy. Get in touch if you'd be keen. I'm sure it sounds really appealing now. And Dan, before we move on, I think we probably need to just take a moment to appreciate what Sir Ben Stokes did at the weekend.
Mate, that was incredible. So is Is Ben Stokes, and I don't know the answer to this, is Ben Stokes currently the best English sportsman about? Thinking about what he did at Headingley, what he did in the World Cup final.
Can you have a best English sportsman?
Well, I don't know.
He's obviously not better than any of the England team in rugby. So, although his dad did play for New Zealand.
Is he potentially one of the most impactful English sportsmen at the moment? I would say,
without question. He's just put on an individual display that, whatever it was, 6 weeks ago he did in the World Cup final, and everyone said, he's just created one of the most memorable sporting moments ever. He's just done it again. So yeah, 100%, he's up there. I don't know if you could go as far as to even name a best English sportsman, but certainly, yeah, where cricket's concerned, there's no doubt. It was just phenomenal to do what he did. England basically had no chance.
That was incredible. Let's not forget, I think a lot of it, and I'm not taking anything away from Ben Stokes. I think he's an absolute legend, and I think what he did was brilliant. But let's not forget, Joe Root had an incredible innings as well.
True.
In that second innings. But what he did just under that pressure, and allegedly, I heard this from another sportsman somewhere, allegedly he said to Leach, when Leach came in and they still had 70-odd runs with 1 wicket remaining, and he just said, survive this first over, I'll do the rest. And that's just awesome, isn't it? Just to have someone just with that confidence, that ability, and just to breed the confidence in the team. So my next question to you, no, actually, let's focus more on that, because that was an unbelievable win. And England cricket team, England cricket fans, I'm a massive England cricket fan. They are just showing. England have got a reputation sometimes in some sports historically of crumbling, when it counts. But the England cricket team have shown nerves of steel beyond belief. They have got balls the size of basketballs.
Hold on. They got 64 all out.
Mate, they won.
In their first innings. Well, they didn't. Ben Stokes won.
Well, it's still a team effort.
I think you've got to be very careful saying that. I think there's a lot of problems in the England cricket team. I think Ben Stokes has helped them survive a game they should have lost, and he's given them the opportunity to fix whatever the problems there are. And it's certainly made for a much more interesting Ashes. He's kept it alive, but I think let's not get carried away. There are our openers haven't performed in the entire Ashes series yet. And we're just fortunate that we have capable batsmen right the way through the 11. Because, until your openers are the ones scoring the runs, it's great having a Ben Stokes who can do what he can do with both bat and ball, but you can't rely on it.
Well, that shut me up fairly quickly.
Yeah. So we're going to move on, though, because we're not the England cricket pod. No, what are we? England rugby? Yeah, England cricket pod. We're the England rugby pod, Dan, and so yeah. But yeah, just quickly though, is Ben Stokes currently the front runner for sports personality?
I think he's got to be up there. And just before people write in and say, and I know somebody will claim I said he's the best English sportsman ever. I'm not saying that, and I'm definitely not saying best ever. It was just a question I posed, but he's got to be front runner for sports personality. But that's only at the moment, because when we win the World Cup,
I was going to say exactly. Well, so let me ask you then: when we win the World Cup, and obviously we don't know what's going to happen yet in terms of how we win the World Cup, but when we do, who is your sports personality prediction?
Well,
or at least the kind of the contender. Who do you think is
I think
likely
the obvious choice would be Owen Farrell, right? The obvious choice would be Owen Farrell.
I think the issue there though, Dan, is that word personality.
Yeah, but
love Owen Farrell, but
it's not used for I think where a lot of people get sports personality wrong. Personality isn't used in regards to them as a person. It's used as basically it's the most who's been the best sporting person that year. And they're saying personality as in the person. They're not saying personality as in.
I hear you. I hear what you're saying, but I think that it's voted for by. Is it the public that vote for sports personality? I think it is, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's the public. So, but don't forget, Andy Murray won it.
So yeah, but people do like him, and he, little things like going on. What's the James Corden sports?
Oh, the comic relief thing.
No. The question of sport. The thing he does.
Oh,
I watch it. I should know what it's called. A League of Their Own.
Yeah.
Think going on things like that and just showing that there's someone behind the sportsman, and like in interviews and things, the way that they come across. And I know that Andy Murray has been. It's been joked about that he's boring, but he makes a joke. He takes the piss out of himself, and so I think there's something in that people kind of can not necessarily relate to, but it makes him more appealing as a person to vote for. With Owen Farrell, I just think he hasn't had the opportunity to do that yet, and I don't know how popular he is as an individual. We love him, but I don't know. I think there are other players in that team that maybe.
So, who's your prediction?
I don't know is the answer. I think. Who do I? I don't know. Before knowing what's going to happen, because obviously if it was a Johnny drop, if Owen Farrell drops a goal that wins us the World Cup, then that's a different story. But not that there's the personality there, but love Manu to be in with a shout, just for some big smashes. Manu Tuilagi, sports personality for breaking through 300 tackles in a World Cup campaign.
So on this Manu thing, moving away from sports personality, I was listening to House of Rugby podcast with Haskell and Tyndall. And Tyndall says that he thinks Manu has to be at 13. Mm-hmm. And the reason for it is if he's at 12, he's typically running. He'll often be running at a forward. He'll often be running maybe at a 7 or something. And they will likely make the tackle. That's their thing. That's their job, basically. At 13, he might be running at a 10 or a back. And even if he's running at a 10, at 12, even a Bundyaki will want to protect their 10. So it opens up more space for him. Now, listening to his reasoning, I think it is solid. And I'm starting to come round to him at 13. Even against Wales in the Six Nations, when we were poor second half, when Manu made that break, it's because he was drifting into the 13 channel. Mm-hmm. So I'm starting to think Manu at 13 might be a great. Well, I know he's played 13 before for England and done damage, and I know he'll do damage at 12 as well. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think what we've got here is quite a unique situation where Manu at 12 or Manu at 13 is going to be dependent on the opposition. I think if we're playing an opposition that's going to play a very tight blitz defence and, like you say, you're going to get the big tacklers up early and they're going to shut Manu down or do a better job of shutting him down, then it makes sense probably to have him further out. But then the key becomes distribution and getting the ball to him in time to let him do what he does. If you're playing a team that's going to have a slightly slower defence, particularly in some of those early games, I think getting the ball sooner, and the sooner he gets the ball, the better. I think the other thing to bear in mind is that when you've got him and Joe Cokanasiga on the pitch together, like we had against Ireland, it's they both do the same thing effectively once they've got ball in hand. And in terms of the opposition defence, they view them in the same way. It's very rare that they're going to commit to one-on-one with Manu because they know he breaks tackles. So he's drawing in defences. So if you've got, as it happened a few times against Ireland, if you've got Big Joe out wide, whether he's the next man out or he's 2 out, and Manu makes a dummy run and pulls, and commits and pulls it off, they have to suck defence in to cover him. When he doesn't get the ball and it goes out wide, you're giving Big Joe, one-on-ones, and you're going to back him most times, particularly against a winger. So I think looking when you look back at the Six Nations and pose the same question, there's definitely an argument for pushing him further out. Just exactly for the reasons that you and obviously Tyndall said.
I'm copying Tyndall.
Yeah. So that makes sense. But I think when you then have Joe Cokanasiga in the back line as well, I think it changes slightly because yes, Manu might be covered. If he's playing at 12, he might be covered by a flanker or a number 8 or something. but I'm not sure there are many teams that would be willing to just assume that their one forward was going to take him down, at least not without making ground. So I still think that they'd be inclined to have someone else and look to do a double tackle on him, which is going to suck defenders in. And again, it then becomes a case of saying, well, who's at 10? If it's Owen Farrell, is he smart enough? Yeah, to see where the right call is to say, let them think the man who's getting the ball, but actually ship it wide quicker and get it out to Big Joe on the wing.
Yeah, so it was interesting. So Joe Cockney-Seeger's first try from a set piece. In my mind, the international rugby team shouldn't score a try first phase of the set piece.
We got 2.
Yeah, and one of the reasons for that is a major reason for that was the running lines for the likes of the Manu. People have to hold because he's such a threat.
Yeah.
And a bit wider, it opens for space. So Manu was absolutely immense that day. That was the best. I think that's the best performance I've ever seen Manu put in an England top. The argument against New Zealand in 2012 or whenever it was, that's obviously close. But Manu, we need him to stay fit because he is an absolute machine. And like you said, with Joe Cockney-Seeger as well, that is if you're an opposition defence, it's a bit like, oh shit, we've got two.
Like on Saturday, watching that game, live, so without knowing the result, every time the ball went wide and you saw a fairly even match-up in terms of numbers, but you had Manu and Joe in that line, it felt like a try was on. And it shouldn't be like that at international level. Now, I know Ireland were really poor, so let's not, let's ignore the scoreline for a minute and just say, it should never have. Sorry, no, don't ignore the scoreline. But my point is, yes, the scoreline was so big because Ireland were poor, but it would never have been that big without England being good. Do you know what I mean? Like if both teams were poor and Ireland were worse, England would have won, but not by that margin. To get a margin like that at this level, even when one team's poor, the other team has to be clinical, and England were.
Completely, and I think that's a huge. I think that's a huge thing for, like, just to look at how clinical England were, how well they finished. Ireland's line-out was absolutely weirdly horrendous, which is not normally. They had no go-forward ball, which makes it really hard for them. One thing I will say about Ireland, Jordan Lama is one of the hardest men I know. To take that tackle of Manu and to stand back up. If that was me, I would still be in my dressing gown shivering in my bed going, Mummy. That was one of the biggest hits I've seen since Josh Lucy on Matt Rogers.
It was massive. Few people trying to somehow make out that it's illegal, but there was just nothing. It was
completely fair.
It was a textbook body height tackle.
And in fairness to Ireland, none of their players or staff or anything. From what I've heard, none of them complained.
No. I mean, they took it. I mean, Lamore. I can't even say it now. Anyway,
I think it's Lama, isn't it?
Oh, that's how it's spelled. I don't know. Jordan Lama.
Either way, that guy to stand up and
he kind of reached out and tried to grab Manu after the hit, but that's just because pride was a little dented along with his chest, I'm imagining.
I think it's because he had no idea where he was.
But yeah, massive hit and fair play, and I'm glad that there was no injury off the back of it, because that would have been a shame. But yeah, just Manu just letting him know, listen, sunshine, this is what you're going to get. And that's the kind of thing we want to see. Massive hits, legal.
That is the kind of thing we want to see. And we also want to see, like I say, Jordan Lama, I don't know if I have more respect for the hit or the fact that he stood up and took it. That was like fury when he took that hit of Deontay Wilder. It was that level of, that would bury most people.
Interesting analogy.
Thanks.
Look, the team in general, I know that Billy and I obviously went through the game as it happened, but it's good obviously now to get your view on some of the aspects. I think that team, from front to back, just looked so different to what we'd seen in the 2 Wales games. When you've got Sinclair and George playing like fly halves, Toje and Cruz. Cruz, by the way, is looking absolutely massive, and
Mate.
for me is absolute shoe-in to be the starting lock with Marrow.
Is he arguably ahead of Marrow?
Possibly. I mean, I think they're quite different, but together they were all. I mean, Marrow was immense on Saturday as well, so I think they just complement each other beautifully. But yeah, George, Sinclair, and a fatty. Although that fatty could be Mako, in which case you've got 3 playmakers across the front.
Well, but Joe Marler, if Mako, because obviously Mako's got a bit of a niggle at the moment, which apparently is not. He's going to miss the Italy game, but apparently he should be fine fairly soon after that. Joe Marler is immense.
Yeah, to clarify, when I say fatty, I don't mean actually that he's fat. I just mean, he's more of a traditional prop. He's there. He's a big unit. He scrummages well. Happy to get his hands dirty, head down. Whereas you look at George and Sinclair, and not only are they doing that at the front, but they're also like playmakers. So I'm looking at the pack and I'm going, we've kind of got these playmakers in Jamie George, in Kyle Sinclair, in Tonga and Cruz, in Underhill, Curry, and in Billy. And that's the forwards.
I don't know if I call Underhill a playmaker.
Well,
I'd call him an absolute psychopath.
Workhorse. But, you look at that try that, I mean, anyone can do it. But, pick and go, draws a man, pops inside to Curry, little kamikaze kid duo try. It was awesome.
I think Underhill has a lot better rugby brain than he's given credit for. Everyone just knows him as super hard, great tackler. But one thing that I loved about Underhill, especially when the game started, his chop tackles. So offloading is a massive thing at rugby at the moment. And typically that means that people will tackle a bit higher sometimes to try and avoid the offload. But Underhill seems to know when to go low and just chop tackle. He did it a few times where he just takes the legs out, stops them dead, and they're not necessarily in a position to offload. Or if they do offload, they're not in a complete danger position. I think Underhill really judges his tackles well.
Well, it's an interesting point, because is this where having the 2 sevens in Underhill and Curry working together is exactly the right call? Because if Underhill goes in and does that chop tackle and they don't offload, and he's obviously backing the rest of his team to say, well, if they offload, someone else will deal with whoever gets the ball. If they don't offload and his chop tackle brings them down quickly, Curry's right there ready to get in and snipe that ball away. So if they're kind of running around the park, working as a unit, doing this, it's another threat.
I think that was a massively successful setup. If I had to pick the World Cup final 15 now, those two are starting on the flanks.
Well, I think the World Cup final pack is exactly what we saw on Saturday, except that if fit, Mako starts ahead of Joe Marler. But, Mako has had 15 minutes of World Cup warm-up. He's out now for the Italy game. They say he will be fit for the World Cup. But, of course, we don't know what that means for game 1 where he's included. But, touch wood, fingers crossed and all that, he stays fit. I think he's the only change to the pack, and Joe Marler on the bench.
I agree with that.
I think we saw our World Cup final pack on Saturday, and they looked immense.
They looked good.
Tuilagi, Cokanasiga, we've talked about. You've got to have them both involved because of not even just because of what they can do ball in hand, but what they offer in terms of influencing defences and forcing defences to play a certain way, which creates the gaps, creates the opportunities. And it's another reason why at times, Tuilagi at 12 with a playmaker at 13 and then Cokanasiga on the outside, when you're on the correct side of the pitch, obviously, means that you're kind of spreading things out. So you've kind of got playmakers dotted in, and you've got kind of the big boys dotted in. You're keeping defences guessing at all times. And if you get your strategy right, and it seems like England are doing that, getting the game plan right, then you have there's constantly multiple options. And I think as long as you've got a rugby brain at 10 who can see what's going on and make critical decisions, on short notice, there's always interesting options available by doing that. So I think Manu is a 12/13 depending on the opposition and depending on what you're trying to do. And there's no reason why you can't change it around during a game, like not actually change position, but just for different moves, for different calls, just step inside, step outside. Because interestingly, it's what Ford and Farrell, and I'll talk about them. I want to talk about them with you in a minute, but what Ford and Farrell did in that game. We know that Johnny Sexton is kind of renowned for his little loop around, old school pass loop, take the ball again and try to create the overlap that way. Well, we didn't quite do it like that, but what was happening was that Farrell was standing inside Ford and they were throwing a miss pass, so missing Farrell out, who was then looping around Ford, effectively creating the same sort of scenario to create more space on the outside and try to induce an overlap. So my question to you is, did the Ford-Farrell partnership work? I mean, obviously it worked because we won, we put 57 points on them, but did it work in terms of a World Cup final? Or do you still think Farrell is the 10? In which case, if you're leaning towards Manu at 13, who's the 12?
Yeah, that's so. I like Manu at 13, having listened to the reasoning behind it. Ford Farrell, I think yes, it did work. Is the short answer. Is that my starting 10-12? I don't know. Farrell's definitely involved, but whether is Farrell maybe Slade at 12? One thing we're also forgetting, if you have Manu at 13, JJ's not a 12.
But nor is Slade, because Slade spent a lot of time playing at 12 for England and frankly was rubbish and everyone was calling for his head. He got moved to 13.
Not everyone.
Everyone but you. He got moved to 13 and everyone suddenly went, wow, okay, this guy, and I'll be the first to put my hand up. I wanted him gone, and then it clicked, and it was when he got moved to 13. So, is a World Cup the time to go, Manu had a great game at 13, let's put Slade back where he couldn't perform for England? I think that's a dangerous game.
I think he can perform there. I think he's...
But on what basis and with what justification? Like we've never seen him perform there for England.
I think he's got the skill set. So I slightly disagree. I don't think he's ever had a cracking game there, but I think he's. Is
that a risk you can take in a World Cup final? Putting someone in a position where they've never had a cracking game for England.
So I would like to see against Italy. I'd like to see Manu at 13, Slade at 12.
If Slade's fit.
If Slade's fit, of course.
Do we know if he's fit?
Well, he's not. We don't know. Well, I don't know whether he is. I hope he'll be fit by then. We've got just over a week now, and it's been a couple of weeks, so I have no idea is the answer. But if not, Ford Farrell, I think can work.
So okay, so jumping back a little bit, then another question for you. And Jack Nowell, as we know, has been injured throughout this World Cup campaign so far, this warm-up campaign. There was hope that he would be back in time for the Italy game. It's looking unlikely, and there's now question marks over whether or not he's going to be fit for the World Cup at all. Obviously, England are hopeful, and there's every chance that they're intentionally putting out these sort of press releases saying, "Oh, we're not sure," because it's about keeping people guessing. However, if the worst happens and Jack Nowell is not available for the World Cup and they have to replace him, do they replace like for like? Do they look at bringing in an extra prop so you've got three of each, because that was it was Harry Williams was left out, and effectively Joe Marler was covering both sides. Do they look for another number 8 because we haven't got an out and out 8, so someone like a Nathan Hughes? Do we look at scrum half? Because that's another thing we need to talk about. Young's not looking great. Hopefully we'll see more from him against Italy. Or does it open the door for another fly half?
So
a lot of ifs.
Yeah, a lot of ifs. Great question. For me, if Jack Nowell can't make it, which I hope to God he does, I still think we can. Jack Nowell's a massive loss, and I think there was one time that I said without him we really struggle. Actually, I don't think it's the end of the world. I think it's a huge loss because he's such a good player, but I think we have so many other good players in that position that it mitigates that risk. But I think if he goes, it's another back, firstly, because I think the forwards have been working on the basis of that's the squad.
Mm-hmm.
So then don't add another dimension to that squad. I think that might change dynamics a bit. So to me, it's another back. Is it another back three?
I don't think so.
I agree with you.
If we're saying that May has to be involved for his pace, and Cokanasiga has to be involved for his size and his pace, and you've got Watson there because he's cover for fullback, but he's also an awesome winger.
He's so good.
And you've got Daly, who's at fullback but can play on the wing, and then you've got McConaughey, who we don't know anything about yet. But we're just banking on the fact that he's some sort of secret weapon that Eddie's going to reveal at some point. I think you've got the back three covered. It was a surprise that he went with 6 of them to start with, and I think it's probably because he saw Jack Nowell as a bit of a utility player. And because there isn't really another Jack Nowell out there. I just think if Jack Nowell can't make it, I think you look further inside, and I think you look at 10 or 9 or 10.
So when did you say the deadline is? Is it the 9th of September?
I think it's the 9th of September.
And the next match is the 7th.
Although it's completely different because we're talking about an injury.
Oh, that's true. At the moment, for me, Ben Youngs has enough in the bank previously to put that down as a poor performance. And it was a poor performance. And I still, based on that and based on the other 2 games, I actually have Willie Hines starting. But I think 2 scrum halves might be enough, but scrum half's definitely an option. I personally... Okay,
so if you went scrum half, before we then just discuss the fly-off bit, if you went scrum half, you're looking at either Danny Kerr, Dan Robson, Richard Wigglesworth or Ben Spencer.
I would personally go Danny Kerr.
I think you'd need the experience, right?
Not just experience. I think he's the next best, personally.
I mean, yeah, fine, but I think whichever way you lean, it's close enough that I think the experience counts for enough to kind of take it over the line anyway. And I think Youngs and Kerr are sort of like for like in terms of experience, but they're very different players. But it would enable you to have 2 impact scrum halves, and we've talked about. I mean, this is the other interesting. You've talked about how the team that's going to win the World Cup, the team that is the best team in the world, is going to have, certainly one of, if not the best scrum half in the world. They're going to control the game from the back of the scrum. Youngs was abysmal.
He was very poor,
and yet we still put 57 on them. Now I know they changed hands, but even there were 3 tries. It was 20 points put on them with Youngs at the back of the scrum. So to me, that just shows even more. What the rest of that team was doing, on what was frankly a poor day from the back of the scrum in the first half.
It was, and it was a very poor day for him. Like I say, I personally believe he's got enough in the bank previously to have another option. And I genuinely believe Ben Youngs is not a great player. I believe it was just a poor day for him.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think it's important that he starts against Italy. And it's important that he's given the opportunity to have a decent run and show. But I think if he goes out against Italy and has a poor game again, I think then questions get asked because decisions need to be made because you can't risk it in a World Cup.
100%, yeah. If that's the case, I think you still take him. And I wouldn't be upset with another scrum half. I wouldn't be upset. Does it open the Danny Cipriani debate again?
Okay, well, let's move to fly half then. If we think fly half is the replacement, then surely Danny Cipriani has to be the call up. He's the next on the list, right? I mean, he was one of 3, and they decided to go with 2.
I believe he'd be next on the list if they go that route, especially if Farrell's looking at 12. I would love to see, and I don't think we have time to do this now. I would love to see Danny Cipriani at 10, Farrell at 12, Manu at 13.
Yeah, I mean this is why it's a shame that they got rid of him before having giving him an opportunity to do that. We'd seen it once, but he came on as off the bench and had that kick in the corner for Johnny May's try, won the game, and that was against. I can't remember who that was against.
Well, against South Africa.
It was South Africa, wasn't it? Yeah. So yeah, we saw it one time, and I think it needs to be seen again. All of the media was suddenly all over Owen Farrell and him don't get on because Owen Farrell gave a look. There was a glance that immediately the rest of the world read it and knew instantly that Owen Farrell hates Danny Cipriani and they could never play together. Well, I'm not convinced that that's true. Apart from anything else, I think Owen Farrell is a bit too professional to let something like that bother him. But I think we needed to see it again. It's all well and good saying, "Oh yeah, but Danny Cipriani, he has moments of magic, but can he do it, throughout an entire game?" Well, we've got warm-up games. Give him an entire game, and let's find out.
There's also, but do we also? So what we need to read into this, as much as anything, is going to. So Ben Moon's obviously been called up as cover. He's gone flying out to Treviso for Mako. But also, along with that, is Charlie Ewels in the second row. I don't
get that.
Understand that. Matt Kovacic, which is interesting, as a possible 8. So could that be thinking that? And Joe Marchant. So possibly Joe Marchant.
I don't really get the Joe Marchant thing either. I mean, he's not as impactful as a Manu, but I'm guessing he's being seen as a sort of a bigger centre. And when you've got Slade and JJ at 13 already, I'm not convinced that Joe Marchant offers that. I don't get that one either. Really, I think Charlie Ewels and Joe Marchant for me are a strange call up. Ben Moon makes sense; he's there to cover Mako. Although you have said that Joe Marler. Well, actually, no, sorry, Joe Marler's already covering now, isn't he?
Yeah.
So yeah,
can Joe Marchant play 12? I'm asking. I don't know. I know him as a 13, but I don't know if he can play 12 as well. I genuinely don't know.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question either. He came in at 13 last weekend off the bench, didn't he? So I'm not sure. What was that? Because JJ was injured.
I don't know why Marchant's called up.
I think JJ maybe got a late niggle, and they decided to bring Joe Marchant in his place.
Yeah, possibly. The Matt Kovacic thing is the one that interests me the most.
Well, absolutely. And it then poses the question, are they thinking, if Jack Noel's unavailable and we need an extra member of the 31, are we thinking that a back row player would be more valuable? Because, to be fair, when Underhill and Curry were both injured, our back row within the 31 was looking pretty sparse.
So yeah, absolutely. Underhill and Curry are 2 incredible 7s, and that's where Matt Kovacic is interesting because he's been awesome at 8 for Exeter. But I mean, I'm a big Matt Kovacic fan saying this, but he's a great 7 as well. He's also a 7 of the same ilk to a Curry and Underhill.
Interesting. 3 7s. Maybe that's what we'll see against Italy. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? Because Billy needs to be rested now.
I really
do not want to see Billy Vunipola against Italy.
I think Billy's had enough game time now to show that he's match fit.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to see him, and I hope we don't.
So yeah, well, that could be very interesting. Having effectively 3 7s in the back row. We might lose a bit of impact in terms of the what Billy brings to the table, but I guess we've made the decision not to have another Billy Vunipola in the squad. So the reality is that if a situation arises where we can't have Billy on the field, then we're going to have a slightly different game plan. So maybe this is the time to test it.
So just quickly, diversifying slightly, based on that performance, and that's not the best England performance I've seen, but if England played to their ability with their best players out there, how that looks, are they the best team in the world?
If England play to their best ability...
Assuming another team also plays to their best ability.
Well, with the England Rugby product, yeah, of course.
I agree.
And we will no doubt hear from particularly Welsh fans that we're talking out of our asses, but no, I genuinely think they are.
That's the thing. I genuinely believe it, and I know that with the England Rugby Pod, I know we're biased. I know, but with that talent, I don't think I think we have the best, like the starting 15, I think is the most talented in the world when they play to their ability. I truly believe that.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect we'll hear from people, or if those people
Bring it on,
who will say, well, any team can be the best if they play to to their very best ability. But obviously,
I mean, if every team,
but obviously they can't, because if
ability.
everyone plays to their very best ability, then someone has to be the best. And yeah, I mean, it would be a hell of a matchup, wouldn't it? The best of England playing their best rugby against the best of New Zealand or South Africa playing their best.
So the All Blacks are just an unbelievable rugby team and an unbelievable rugby nation, where I think England slightly better than them. I think we have all round our game, whereas I think the All Blacks, some of the stuff the All Blacks do, I don't think England could do or any other team in the world. But I think overall, if you look at our front row, if it's Mako, Sings, George, Marrow, Cruz, but Underhill, Curry, and Billy, to me, there's no pack that can come close to that.
You're right, mate. You sound constipated.
I am, mate. I need to calm down, breathe, I'm getting excited.
Out through the mouth. Stop being a weirdo.
It's I've been watching a lot of rugby this morning. I'm getting pretty.
It's because you keep missing the games.
I know. It's been infuriating, but we literally have just over 3 weeks till the World Cup starts.
We do. It's exciting times, and yeah, I don't know if you've been watching the Rising Suns. This is a question to Dan, but also to you guys listening. If you've been watching the Rising Suns, they're on episode 8 now. It's kind of I guess it's a little bit like a episode by episode version of what Living with the Lions was for the Lions tour. You know, it's awesome. It's kind of seeing what the guys are getting up to in camp and just kind of getting a feel for how it's evolving, which has been really kind of insightful, but also interesting, and just helps get you kind of up for the games and up for the World Cup. But this week they had the Archbishop in camp to help with a bit of fitness. He's obviously a qualified fitness instructor, among other things, and that's of course James Haskell, the Archbishop of Banterbury, self-named. But yeah, he was in camp helping the boys get their pump on. And it was awesome to see. And Eddie was saying afterwards, this is a guy who, was an integral part of England's unbeaten year. I think the thing with Haskell is he probably wouldn't have been selected, but he took that out of the selector's hands because he was obviously injured and has since retired. So it's probably a bit easier to be involved in the camp because it's not like he has to go in there and suck up the fact that he wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
But just watching the video and seeing the boys, there's a bit of piss taking, but they're also taking him seriously, So they'll take the piss out of him and then do exactly what he's telling them to do. It just looked awesome having him part of it all, and he was talking about it, very humbled by the fact that he was invited to be there and to be around the boys in the build up to the World Cup. They have to find a way to take him, like mascot, whatever. Make the Archbishop of Banterbury a role within the England World Cup camp, and take him out to Japan. He's also played in Japan. He's got experience that would be valuable.
I would love that. I don't think it's going to happen, bearing in mind his now MMA career. But also, I think with Haskell, the thing about Haskell is with everything that comes with him, which you and I personally love, but a lot of people focus on the sort of personality, what's behind the rugby player. I think a lot of people forget just how good a player he was. He was a brilliant player. Just anyone who's unsure, watch that tour to Australia in 2016, whenever it was, and just watch him play. He was that's how good a player he was, and it wasn't a one-off thing. Like, to me, that was probably his best.
He peaked. That was where he was peaking.
That's when he peaked. But there's also, it wasn't like a stratospheric rise. He had other times where he was always a really good player, and I think a lot of people forget just how good he was. And him going into camp, like you say, he throws himself into everything. He's so knowledgeable. Great. I love the fact he was involved in that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's good. It's good for the team. It's bringing a bit more experience. And most of the guys, will remember him as a teammate. Not like bringing in someone who won the World Cup in 2003. This is a guy that most of them will have played with. yeah, just having that experience in there from a workhorse like him, particularly kind of off the pitch. I know as you mentioned, lots of people kind of hang on the sort of the bants and the stuff, the social media stuff that he does, but he's a guy that worked hard and he's good at working hard. That was something he was always very good at. So yeah, not a bad person to have involved. And yeah, just it was great to watch. So if you haven't seen any of them, I suspect YouTube, you head over to the England Rugby various social media pages. I'm sure there's links to all of these, but there's 8 episodes in. They're about 10 minutes a pop, and you can kind of see what the England boys have been getting up to in camp, and it's quite interesting watching. But yeah, I think the bottom line is things are looking good. I feel like England are they're starting to peak at the right times. I'm loving the fact that when they're interviewed, none of them are getting kind of too overexcited about anything. The result from the kind of the feedback from the players after the Ireland game was very much great to get a result, but we know we've got more to give. We know we can do more of this. We know we can do more of that. It just feels like the sky is the limit for these guys, and they rightly don't feel like they've peaked yet, and that's an exciting thing to think about, this England team after last weekend's performance.
Agreed. One quick question for you: is Farrell's kicking a concern?
I don't think you can say Well, how many did he miss on Saturday? 2?
Yeah, I'm not saying either way yet. To me, there's something. I think he's an absolute world-class kicker. The reason I say that, and the reason that we've been spoiled, is because we had Johnny.
Yeah, but I mean, George Ford. The reason this is coming up is because George Ford has 100% success rate in this warm-up campaign. I think quite a few pundits have sort of talked about the fact that actually George Ford, he's got 100%. Owen Farrell is better with the harder kicks.
Yeah.
I don't think it's something to be concerned about. Because don't forget, we've also got Elliot Daly, who, despite the fact that we've talked about thinking maybe Watson would be the better shout, I have. If you want Daly involved, if Daly's there, he's a kicker. He's obviously the long range kicker, but he's a kicker. Henry Slade probably can kick, but yeah, if you're going with Ford and Farrell, you've got options. I think you stick with Farrell. I don't think he would want the job if he didn't think. I think he would designate it if he didn't think he was in form. So no, I'm not too worried. I don't think it's something to be concerned about.
Fair enough.
I think he's missing on purpose just to feed a false sense of security into the rest of the world. But actually, I don't think it matters, because you've got Big Joe and Manu who are going to be smashing through and scoring too many tries for it to matter.
I seriously hope so.
Just before we call time on today's episode, then I just want to quickly turn to this weekend, where Wales, who obviously became number 1 in the world by beating England in that slightly bizarre game 2 weekends ago, are taking on Ireland, who could have gone number 1 in the world if they'd beaten England, but they didn't. They lost 57-15 in a record loss. So these two are coming together. I genuinely think that team that beat Ireland would have done similar things to the Welsh team in Cardiff. That performance. But we'll never know, because we'll never get to see that. But that's beside the point. Wales taking on Ireland. First of all, well, I suppose the thing is, so they went for a kind of a gun first 15 against England, both weeks. Lost the first one, narrowly won the second one. They've now made 14 changes for their game against Ireland.
I was going to ask, have you seen the team? Yeah.
They made 14 changes for the game against Ireland. Do you think, I guess just because I feel like Eddie's got it so right, do you think they've got their tactics wrong by starting off with what everyone's referring to as a gun 15, but they're kind of their first choice starting 15, getting a loss and a pretty kind of wishy-washy win in Cardiff?
They still beat England a great team.
Yeah, no, fine. And became number 1 in the world and everything else. But let's be honest, if you're one of those players, you're not coming away from that game going, yeah, boys, we really showed them, we've got real belief in ourselves. You're coming away going, okay, guys, we got away with a win there, but that wasn't what we thought was going to happen, and we believe we're considerably better than that. Like, you're, as a Welsh fan, sure, you're gonna shout that you're number one in the world and all the rest of it. But I genuinely think if you're a player in that Welsh team, you're coming away going, that wasn't great. So right now, my point is that right now you've got these 14 changes, so a completely different side is going up against Ireland. Do you have to have your first 15 come back for the second leg in 2 weeks' time in order to have given them a game where hopefully they've had a result, a good result leading into the start of the World Cup? Because if you play a sort of a test 15, as in a test, not like a test match, but a test as in like what they're going to do this weekend, 2 weeks in a row against Ireland in order to try out combinations and what have you, and then you go into the World Cup, you've got a first 15 that doesn't have much to show for their warm-up games, really.
I would slightly argue that. I love to mug off for Welsh. I would slightly argue that they deserve to be the best team in the world at the moment. If you look at results, and fair enough, maybe it's been a favourable fixture list, maybe it's not, but they have ground out wins. Do I believe they can win the World Cup? I don't personally, but I don't think...
So how can you deserve to be number one in the world, but not believe that they...
Okay, I believe they can win the World Cup. I don't believe they will.
I don't.
I believe they can. On their day, I believe they can beat anyone. I don't believe they will be able to do it enough in a row, but I could be wrong. I don't think they're necessarily playing anything wrong. I think number one in the world will give them huge confidence. I think it was predefined anyway. I don't think they suddenly changed their team because of previous results.
No. They made this plan ahead of time for sure. There was an interview with Warren Gatland where he said that he'd discussed the teams with Joe Schmidt, so that they kind of knew what they were doing, in a roundabout way. So they discussed the fact that. So I'm on that basis, I'm assuming that Joe Schmidt is either going to play, a first 15 against a Welsh sort of select 15, and then they're going to switch it around in the next one, or they're both going to go with slightly untested combinations in this one, and then maybe go for a bit more of a test match for the next one. I'm assuming, but I guess I just, you look at England, they went with a sort of a second 15 in the first game, they got a win, they had a second 15 in the second game, and it was close, it could have gone either way, and there was definitely an uplift when they brought on some of the better players. They went with a gun 15 against Ireland and created a new record, and then they're going to play against Italy where, okay, they'll probably take a step back, but you've given all the right amounts of confidence in all the right places along the way, and it feels like the team is just, everything has gone in the right direction, whereas Wales have had two games that, one was a loss and one was a narrow victory with a gun 15. Now they're going with this combination 15, and there's one game left after that. Like, what do you do? Do you stick with combinations? And as I say, things are a little bit sketchy going into the World Cup, a bit unknown. Or do you do this week and then go gun 15 next week and put it all on that and go, right, we need a result? And if they both do it, one of those two teams is going into a World Cup in a tough spot, unless they have like an epic test match that's just really close. And do you know what I mean?
I feel like Ireland need a win very badly. I feel Wales' confidence. I think that number one in the world will add massive confidence to Wales. If they lost this weekend, I don't think it's the end of the world, because, like you say, it is probably a second 15. Even if they lose again, I think Ireland, it's more important. Ireland's performance is a lot more important than Wales is. I think Wales are not in that bad a place, actually.
Fair enough. So who do you think will win? I'm going with Ireland.
I think Ireland will win this weekend, because having seen Wales' team, great players, good players, but I don't think that's definitely not a top international team. I think Ireland will probably want to put out a stronger team because they need that win. After last weekend, they need a win. I mean, they were absolutely destroyed by our boys.
Correct. And I think a lot of ex players and pundits and things have come out saying, sometimes with losses it's easy to come up with excuses. It's easy to talk about how it's done us a favour because it's kind of forced us to look at certain things. And I think most of them come out and just gone, no. Bottom line was that's unacceptable and it's a concern. So I think that there's only one. I mean, there's only one way they can go from here, and that's to put in a performance and show that it was some sort of a blip. And so from that reason, I think Ireland have to go with a predominant starting 15. I don't think they can afford to go with a kind of a mix up. But I'd love to see, regardless of what they do this week, I would like to see Wales play their number one side, their World Cup final team, against an Ireland World Cup final team for their second Test match, and I think that will reveal a lot. But for that reason, they may not do it.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. Whether that happens, I'm not sure. But either way, England in a strong position. I mean, it's kind of our role to get carried away with it.
Of course. And
we are a bit carried away with it. Well, I certainly am. The Italy game will be interesting. I'll be interested in what team Eddie puts out. I hope it is. I hope there's a few players out there who get rested. Manu, Billy, Owen Farrell.
I'm not sure Farrell will get rested because I think
he said he played one.
Well, he hasn't started at 10 yet. Yeah,
that's true. So I don't mind that. Elliot Daly, I think, needs a rest.
Take the fag out your mouth till we've finished recording.
Sorry, Elliot Daly. I'd like to see Watson start at fullback.
Yes, I would definitely. I think it's a mistake to kind of go in saying he's the cover and then not actually have played him yet.
Do we know if McConaughey's going to be fit to start?
We don't. I'm assuming he will be because again, I think it's a bizarre one if we take him to the World Cup knowing really very little about him. So I'm hoping he's fit to play. So he'll be on one of the wings. Maybe they take out Manu and Big Joe and say, right, if we don't have the biggies in the back line, what happens when we have outrageous pace in Watson at fullback and then Johnny May and McConaughey on the outsides? Maybe have Daly on the bench. Maybe bring him on in the wing as to see how he gets on.
Who would you have in the centres?
I then think if he's fit, you have Slade at 13.
JJ?
Do you go JJ and I mean maybe JJ's on the bench, but you wouldn't have. I don't think you'd go JJ and Slade in the centres. But then what are the options?
I reckon it might go Piers Francis at 12.
Oh, of course, yeah, Francis. So you go Francis 12 with Slade / JJ 13. Willie Hines. Do you know what? I'd actually go. I'd rest Willie Hines. I think he's shown us enough. I'd have Young starting. Ford is on the bench, but actually Ford's on the bench as scrum half cover, not fly half cover, because Ford is the third choice backup scrum half at the moment, and he's been doing some training in camp at scrum half, for an occasion where he might potentially be needed there. And I think with everything they've already shown, why not let's see what that looks like.
Well, yeah, I would hope Ben Youngs, possibly give him 10 minutes, but I want Ben Youngs to get as much of a game as possible. Yeah,
fine. 10, 15 minutes at the end of the game. And obviously, like you say, give Ben Youngs the platform to say, the Ireland game was a kind of a mishap, and hopefully that's the case. But if Ben Youngs comes out and absolutely bosses it, you don't need him to stay on for the full game. You've seen that he's made up for what's happened, so then you can kind of maybe go 20, 25 minutes for a Ford at 9. I think that'd be an interesting thing to look at. That's what I'm saying. I think England are in a position where they can now go back to testing out things without worrying too much about what that means for them going forwards. They've shown what they're capable of with a couple of combinations. They've shown how much the uplift that exists when they then go, here's a gun team. So now is your kind of last chance, rest a few key players, try out a few last minute combinations, and just get a good run out, a bit more match fitness, and be ready to rock and roll against Tonga.
Interesting. I'm liking it. This is going to be. We are going into this in such a sort of positive mindset compared to which is great. Hopefully, we'll back that up. I'm sure we will.
Of course. It's going to be an interesting one for sure. Unfortunately, no England rugby this weekend, but there is obviously a big game with the Wales-Ireland match, which kicks off at about 2:00, I think, or certainly the programme starts at 2 on Channel 4. So those without Sky can still watch it. And yeah, we'll no doubt send out some tweets and things, and we can talk about that next week. But of course, next week's episode is going to be predominantly about the team he chooses for Italy, and I suspect there'll be one or two interesting decisions made there that we can delve into. And then it's next Friday, a week tomorrow. Dan will be available for a bit of a live, his first live match, semi-live match, live pod or whatever. So we will then bring you all of the action from that England game against Italy then. But guys, thanks so much for listening to us. Hopefully more and more of you are tuning in now as things really start to gear up. We've been hearing from lots of people about how World Cup fever is causing them to look for their favourite rugby pods, and glad to see that a number of you are finding us. Keep that coming. Keep spreading the word. If you've got any questions for us, any thoughts, if you want to abuse us for saying the wrong things or for my clear dislike of the Welsh, feel free. Social media at England Rugby Pod, or you can email us englandrugbypod@gmail.com. Let us know whatever you want. As mentioned at the beginning, we are looking to get a few people involved, little guest spots, particularly if they can talk to us about our opposition. So if you are one of those guys, or if you know anybody, guys or girls, if you know anybody that fits that criteria, let them know, get in touch. We'll see what we can do. And we will catch you guys next week.
Bye, guys.